What were the political parties between 1780 and 1870?
So, your question was, what were the Democratic parties from 1780 to 1870? And my answer is Federalists, Democratic Republicans, the Whigs with an H, Republicans, Democrats as separate, a Free Soil Party, Liberty Party, American Party, and the Know Nothing Party. And the American and Know Nothing Party were basically the same thing.
What were these parties' beliefs?
What were these political parties' beliefs was your question. Okay, so I put the Know Nothing / American Party strongly opposed immigrants and followers of the Catholic Church. The Whigs with an H stood for protective tariffs, national banking, and federal aid for the internal improvements. The Republicans opposed slavery. The Democrats thought states should retain as much power as possible. The Free Soils opposed the extension of slavery in the territories not yet admitted to statehood. The Liberty Party was against slavery and later merged with the Free Soil Party in 1848. Federalists believed in a strong federal government. Democratic Republicans wanted a national government with limited power because they didn't want the national government to have more power than the states.
What political party did the presidents belong to during their presidency?
Okay, so your next question was, what party were the presidents part of during their presidency? And I wrote John Adams. He was a Federalist. Thomas Jefferson was a Demo-Republican. James Madison was a Demo-Republican, or Demo-Republican means Democratic Republican, just so you know. James Monroe was a Democratic Republican. John Q. Adams, or John Quincy Adams, was a National Republican. Andrew Jackson, who was a Democrat. Martin Van Buren was a Democrat. William H. Harrison, Whig, was a Whig with an H. John Tyler was a Whig. James K. Polk was a Democrat. Zachary Taylor was a Democrat. Millard Fillmore was a Whig. Franklin Pierce was a Democrat. James Buchanan was a Democrat. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Don't forget that. And Andrew Johnson was a Republican. And Ulysses S. Grant was a Republican.
Go.
Why did these parties begin or end?
So another one of your questions was, why did these parties begin or end? And I did it for 3 parties. So my first two parties, I said that the Democratic, Republican, and the Federalist Party began because they could not agree on if the government should have more power than the states or less power than the states. So they decided that you could be either part of someone who believes in a strong central government or national government or federal government, or someone who doesn't believe in a strong federal or national government. And that's why that started. The Whig Party was formed in opposition of Andrew Jackson's Democratic Party. So they made that party to go against Andrew Jackson's Democratic Party.
2, 1.
What's something else you know about these parties?
Other Republican Party ended when Democratic Republicans and Republicans were separated, when it became 2 different parties. the Republicans, they were against slavery, as you know. And now, in this time period, that slavery doesn't exist, the Republican Party wasn't ended, but it was changed to something else because we don't have that issue anymore. So it means people have different beliefs in the Republican Party.
Yay! What became of Abraham Lincoln's three sons, William, Robert, and Todd?
The next question was, what became of Lincoln's three sons, William, Todd, and Robert? Okay, so sadly, William Wallace Lincoln died at age 11. So as he died, he slowly died day by day, and it got worse, and his illness got worse. He had typhoid fever, which is an illness that can be caused by eating or drinking contaminated water or food. This could have happened because the water that the White House drew was from a river where many or thousands of soldiers and horses were camped out, and who knows what they did to that water. Could have been taking their evening bath. Who knows? Tad Lincoln sadly died at the age of 18, so he was a young boy too. As a young child, he did not attend school, or at least he did not attend school during his father's lifetime. He's also known for interrupting presidential meetings, so he was very crazy. He was very impulsive, and had run free in the White House. Some stories say that he would interrupt presidential meetings, collect animals, and charge visitors to see his father. But sadly, he died at age 18 on July 15th, 1871 in Chicago. Robert Lincoln was the oldest son of Lincoln's to grow to adulthood. So he was basically the oldest of all of them, or the one who lasted the longest out of the sons. He served for the Union Army, and he was captain of the army in the closing days of the Civil War because his mother would not let him fight until he was old enough. He was also an active in Republican politics. So, yeah. And spoke as a candidate for office, including the presidency. He did all his work trying to be a candidate for office, but he never made a campaign, which really made it hard. So, the one office he was elected for was town supervisor, which is a lot better than nothing. So,
What was the Missouri Compromise of 1820?
Woo! So your next question was, what was the Missouri Compromise of 1820? And I think it was an effort to balance out the number of free slave states and slave states. So free slave states were non-slave states. They didn't have slaves. So, yeah, it basically balanced out the number. So if, there was the North and the South, and they were both 11 states. I know this is wrong, but whatever. Just an example. So North had 11, South had 11. Then here comes Missouri, and they want to join the North. Or, yeah. Here comes Candyland, and they want to join the North. Well, now the South only has 11, and the North has 12. So what are they going to do? So Candyland, Missouri, whatever. Missouri splits itself in basically half. Not really half, but kind of splits itself. So part of it is north and part of it is south. And that's how they solved that.
Going down? Ow! What caused the Missouri Compromise of 1820?
So your next question was, what was the cause of the Missouri Compromise? And I sort of answered that in the last one, but not so much. So this is what I wrote. Missouri wanted to be a part of the Union as a slave state. So they were already a slave state. This threatened the balance between the slave and free states. So if they did join the Union as a slave state, that would mess with the balance. And that could threaten it and make the North or the South really mad. And that.
What effect did this compromise have on the nation?
Okay, so last time I kind of touched on this, but I didn't really talk about it. This part is going to be about this part you asked, what was the cause? And my answer is the cause of this Missouri Compromise of 1820 was oh wait, no. Okay. So your question was, what was the effect of the Missouri Compromise of 1820? And my answer is, I kind of touched on this, but I didn't really talk about it all the way, was that it put a balance, for one, into the North and the South. So it was balanced out. I think you know that. And it even, in balancing, it evened out the number of free and slave states. And this actually caused the Union to stay together for more than 30 years, which is pretty amazing. This also, you may not know this, but it was also cause of the Civil War.
What else do you know about this compromise?
Hello. Okay, so your next question was, what's something else I know about the Missouri Compromise? Well, one thing I know is that Missouri, during this time, really wanted to be away from Massachusetts. So this helped them get away from Massachusetts, which made them a lot happier. And then I also learned that another cause of Missouri Compromise was the conflicts. And this made basically the Missouri Compromise. So, yeah.
What was the Kansas-Nebraska Act?
Okay, so your next question was, what was the Kansas-Nebraska Act? And I say that it allowed the residents of Kansas to vote on whether they wanted to be a free or a slave state. So, during this time, there were many people from both sides, and later you'll hear a little more about that. So, they had the chance to vote if they wanted to be a free or a slave state, because at that time, the act allowed them to do that.
What caused the Kansas-Nebraska Act?
Question number 2 about the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So you asked, what was the cause of this act? And the cause was Kansas wanted to be able to choose if they were a slave or free state, which is why so many people came to vote for it. Yeah, it was basically because they wanted to choose. They wanted to be able to decide, because they didn't want the government to tell them if they could be free or slave. They wouldn't allow that.
What effect did it have on the nation?
So, Our next question was, what was the effect of this act? And the effect, which I said I would talk about later, was bleeding Kansas. Well, one of the effects was bleeding Kansas, which I'll explain. So your next question was, what's the effect? The next question was, what was the effect of the Kansas-Nebraska Act? And one of the effects was bleeding Kansas. Now, bleeding Kansas was when people from the North and the South came flooding into Kansas because they wanted to vote. And the residents, or the people there, the residents and the other people, voted. And it took, since there were so many people from both sides, they couldn't decide. So it took a really long time to decide. So during this time, there were conflicts in Kansas, and people were getting killed, which is how it got the name Bleeding Kansas. And, there were gangs because they couldn't decide, and they wanted the North to win or they wanted the South to win. And eventually, it became a union state.
What else do you know about this act?
Okay, your question was, what is something else I know about this act or learned? And I also learned that this act divided Kansas into part free and part slave state. So part of it was free and part of it was slave. That's something else.
Who was Stephen A. Douglas?
So your next question was, who was Stephen A. Douglas? And I wrote, he was a politician who designed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and he liked to debate. So he would debate a lot. Like, a lot.
What were his political careers and his beliefs?
Your question was, who was Stephen A. Douglas and what were his political careers and beliefs? So, his political careers, I wrote, Stephen A. Douglas was a politician who designed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which I already told you. He served as Morgan County's attorney, the leader of the Illinois Democrats, elected in the Illinois House of Representatives. He was a registrar for the Springfield Land Office. He was an Illinois Secretary of State and a justice of the Illinois Supreme Court. And he did all of this at a very young age, which is a lot of accomplishments at a very young age. Which, on the website, it said he was 27 when he did all of this. Maybe not in the same year, but around that. Okay, so the rest of the question that I answered earlier was his beliefs that I forgot to answer. And he believed that settlers of a territory should decide the slavery question without input from the rest of the nation. So they should be able to decide if they want to be a slave or free state without having the nation to convince them.
You're on.
That's what we should do. Is there anything else you know about him?
Your next question was, what else do I know about Stephen A. Douglas? And I wrote that he's also known for his debates that I talked about earlier. The debates he's most known for are the ones with Abraham Lincoln. They would go full on debate, and it was crazy.
What does the prairies were on fire mean?
I don't know.
I'm back with your next question. Oh, and one thing, I think it's kind of sad that your friends didn't know either. Just to say. Okay. So, I answered to your question, something else what does the prairies on fire mean? I wrote, the prairies were on fire means that the prairies were very popular and many people wanted to be there. This was because of the because Kansas was able to decide if they wanted to be a slave or free state. People on both sides flooded into Kansas to vote. It took a very long time for them to decide. Sadly, during this time, Bleeding Kansas occurred. During this time, many people died because they were being killed because they couldn't decide, which I also mentioned earlier.